Welcome in. It is Monday, the 11th of August, 2025, and Tottenham Hotspur play professional football this week. It is no longer friendlies. It's the real deal. And that means it's time for another riveting season of Top of the Perch. I am your host, as always, Nick Bird. Of course, before the Premier League even kicks off, we are traveling to Udine, Italy on Wednesday for the UEFA Super Cup against PSG, which means now seems the perfect time as any to do the 2025-26 season preview for Tottenham Hotspur. Well, coming into the season, it's new manager, new hopes, same deflating feeling at the beginning of the season. We enter this upcoming week with one true signing, two true signings, one loan, and that's about it. One sold player, and that would be our former captain, Heung-min's son. And you got a question right now, what is the club doing? We got a new manager coming in Thomas Frank. Of course, he brings in his own methods that he used at Brentford the past 7 seasons, and he did a miraculous job for what the club had. But here we are now. You're at a bigger club, and the club has done almost nothing for you this summer. Hamid Kudus, great signing. You got, Paulinho, you brought him in on loan. But those are going to be your two guys that are probably going to make the most impact in the first team. We'll get into who was fully brought in later. But this team is still screaming out for so much more help, and it's just not there at the moment. As of last night, there was a report that came out that Tottenham was starting to be into negotiations with Manchester City for Savinho, which is great on the attacking end, but this team still lacks a 10 for reasons we will get into later on. It is a little disheartening given that this club won the Europa League less than, 80, 90 days ago, 100 days ago. I'm not exactly sure the number. And they've done almost nothing to show for it. This team was screaming out for help for mostly the second half of last season due to injury problems. And they haven't done anything to fix that yet. The depth is still not there. We'll get into the schedule later. It's going to be another grueler of season, pretty much no different than it was last year, except everything's a tiny bit more condensed because we got to end a little bit earlier because it is going to be a World Cup year. It's kind of terrifying that we haven't done anything. We have been lapped multiple times by the rest of the Big Six. Thankfully, Newcastle's kind of stumbling this summer. They've tried to make big signings, though. Just nobody's choosing them. They're choosing other places in the Big Six. Tottenham don't even seem to be trying. The Morgan Gibbs-White situation, I don't know if we'll ever know the true answer on what happened there. I have a feeling some phone calls were made by a certain owner of one of the clubs that was involved to maybe some of his Greek mob bosses to make some knocks on some doors. But I'm not speculating anything. I'm just saying it has happened before. That felt like it was like wow, we're really shooting for the stars here. Tottenham are going to be doing everything they can this summer to actually compete. And then we wait 3 weeks to find out Morgan Gibbs-White is signing a new contract at Nottingham Forest. We're told the money is still there and we're getting massive investment from, stadium naming rights or maybe a new shirt sponsor starting next year. Where's that money gone? Was it ever real? I always thought it wasn't real, but this still proves my point. It probably never was real because I'm sure we we're going to try to pay this release clause for Gibbs White in some type of payment plan type way, where we're not just going to pay the full $60 million up front. We're going to give you installments of whatever. And of course, that's not how a release clause works. So the money probably was never real. And that's just something that Tottenham have to come to terms with. I mean, I think a lot of fans saw the writing on the wall that the money was never real. But it's good to show that the money was never real. Christian Romero staying this summer, I mean, that's a huge deal, but how big of a deal is it if you're not going to do anything else around the team? That's a major, major problem. And obviously, as aforementioned, our one sale of the summer was our club captain. Son Heung-min has moved on to MLS. He is now at LAFC. And, I mean, it leaves a massive hole. You can see how much he meant to this team. He meant to the club, what he meant to the fans. Whether, those be the fans that were born in North London and have grown up with Spurs all their lives, or the fans in Korea that just idolize Sonny for the man that he is, or, I mean, even, Spurs fans around the world. Like, everybody knew, like, Sonny was that guy. He is, even though he wasn't grown through the academies, he was Mr. Tottenham. You could tell he would give everything for this club. And you really saw that down the stretch last year, going into the Europa League final. You saw all that. And it is so fitting that his final game, a professional game, we're not counting the preseason, his final professional game for Tottenham Hotspur was that Europa League final. He got subbed on, captain's armband got put on, and he guided the ship into the shore to get Tottenham their first trophy since 2008 and their first European trophy since 1984. And it's a massive loss for the club. And what have the club done to somewhat replace him? Not much. They have not done much. And here we are. We are here now sitting the week the Premier League starts. And we've got questions. We've got a lot of questions about this team, but not a lot of answers. So let's get into this. Let's take a look at who Tottenham have brought in this summer. The first player being Luka Vjosevic. He was signed, I want to say 2 summers ago, but he couldn't come over because he was only 16 at the time. And due to Brexit, eligibility rules, all that fun stuff, he could not come over till he's 18. So he has come over to North London finally. Long awaited, it feels like. We've watched a lot of highlights from him in, I believe, Poland, Belgium, some in Croatia. We've seen a lot of him already, and he looks to be an insane talent. The question is he going to get any playing time, being that he's 18 years old? That's the big question. I don't know if the plan is to loan him out this summer, but, I mean, I don't know what we plan to do, because I believe he would probably be 4th right now on the depth chart of center backs. Like, that's just kind of how it falls. Maybe, I don't think you bump him up to 3rd, because you got Romero, you got Van de Ven. Those are obviously going to both be your ones. I think you got Danzo there, you got Dragic in there. Those can probably be your 2s. You can maybe throw him at a 3 with the player we're going to talk about next, Kota Takai. Both of those, I don't know if they're going to be here come, September, when we're in the grueling 2 match days each week, either it be in the Champions League or the Carabao Cup, and then you got a Premier League game on the weekend. I don't know if those guys are going to be there, because with players that young, you want them getting playing time somewhere. So I almost kind of feel like it would be better if they go out on loan this year. I don't know if it's going to happen, though. As we transition a little bit here, as I mentioned, Kota Takai, bring him in. He was a signing this summer from Kawasaki Frontale in Japan. He came over for right around £5 million. Once again, a young center back. Everything I've heard so far is that this kid is something else. I'm very excited to see him play. I just don't know when that play time is going to come. It's tough with this kind of thing because like I said, you don't know what to expect. You're signing a kid who's 18, 19, 20, any of those numbers. And you never know if they're going to actually develop into the player you expect them to be. Obviously, I think a lot of people have big hopes for both of these kids, and I sure hope that, these are the kids for the future. But you never truly know until they've had multiple games played in league play. And I think that's going to be really tough for Tottenham trying to figure out all this, because you just never know. You never know with these kids. Hopefully they develop down the line, and that's why I think they should get some playing time this year. Even if they don't go out on loan, like they should be playing. I would say play them in the Carabao, play them in the FA Cup. Maybe throw them in for a Champions League game if they're going to stay. If they don't, that's completely fine. Put them out on loan. But, guys, please, we need the youth getting playing time. That's all we need. So let's get back into this. The other two signings so far this summer, and one of them isn't even a signing, it's a loan. Hamid Kudus comes over from West Ham for £55 million. The right winger can play both the left. He can potentially play a 10. We'll see about that. I don't think he's going to, but this is a good signing for Tottenham. I'm excited to see how he plays. I think this is a nice step up from West Ham for the Ghanaian right winger. I think this was a good signing. And then, it was like 10 minutes later was the news about Morgan Gibbs-White, and it really felt like we were getting serious. But that never happened. He's looked really good in the preseason. I know we haven't really seen much in the preseason, but it feels like he is a player that could potentially fit into this Thomas Frank system. I mean, we look back at last year. I know it wasn't the best of years for him. It was only 5 goals, 3 assists. But, I mean, he played in almost, I believe he started in 31 matches, played in 32. And he was still, he still made a major factor for West Ham all last season. West Ham wasn't that great last season. But if you look back to 2023-24 season, you have 14 goals, 6 assists. And then you start to go back to his Ajax seasons. Of course, there was that 22-23 season. He played 42 games, 18 goals, 6 assists. And, of course, that was the year that led to the transfer to West Ham. I'm excited to see how he played. Like I said, I think he could be a very potential good player for Tottenham. He's not an exact replacement for Son, but he brings depth to that, side. Obviously, Son played on the left, but Kudus can play on the left also, as we've seen in the preseason. Should be interesting to see how that plays out. And the final player that has come in this summer There's Joao Palhinha, the defensive midfielder from Bayern Munich, joins on a 1-year loan. He returns to the Premier League after one season at Bayern Munich that saw him play 25 games, 0 goals, 0 assists, which of course does not sound ideal, but for a defensive midfielder, obviously, shooting and scoring, all that stuff isn't really his biggest thing. But you go back his 2 seasons at Fulham, the 23-24 season, 22-23 season. He played 40 games both of those years, 4 goals in each season. I believe he picked up an assist in the 23-24 season. And prior to that, he was a teammate with Pedro Porro at Sporting Club de Portugal, where, he was a main factor in their success. So it's going to be interesting to see that re-link up of Palhinha and Pedro Porro. Of course, both play on the Portuguese national team too, so that plays a big factor here. With Palhinha, I believe it is a $30 million option at the end of the, or £30 million option, I should say, at the end of the season. Should be interesting to see how that plays out. Let's take a look at the players that are farewell for now, all the players that have gone out on loan. You are going to notice a big trend here. These are all young players here. They haven't really had a lot of time in the first team, if any time at all. But the loan brigade has been sent out. Heung-min was brought in last season. I believe he played in 1 game for Tottenham, and I believe it was in an FA Cup tie. Then he got loaned to QPR. This year he's getting loaned to Portsmouth. Should be interesting to see how that plays out. Ashley Phillips, I don't think he's had any play time with Tottenham yet. Goes out on loan to Stoke City for the 2nd consecutive year. Alejo Velez has gone on loan to Rosario Central in Argentina. I believe there is an option to buy. That might be a mandatory option to buy, and I think it's only about £5 million or less. I'm not 100% sure. I remember reading that somewhere. It seems like his time at Tottenham has come to an end after really not playing at all. Signing him, hoping he was going to be something great, and he just was not. Alfie Devine has gone out on loan to Preston North End. This included a contract extension that was really only for 1 extra year, but this loan also has a option to buy at the end of it. I believe there may be conditions that need to be met, and that becomes permanent automatically. We'll obviously see what goes on from there. That is not Mikey Moore. That is Jamie Donnelly. He has also joined Ashley Phillips at Stoke City. A great loan season at Leyton Orient last season sees him go up a tier this year to the championship. Hopefully that means potentially next year. Maybe some playtime in the first team. Most likely not, though, because we know how this team plays. Tyrese Hall, another great young player for Tottenham, gets a loan out to Notts County. That should be really good. Really excited to see him develop at a place that seemed to do really well for us last year. Another place that did really well for us last year was Oxford United. We get repaid with that again as Will Lancashire goes on loan to that club. I believe Lancashire made his Tottenham debut last year in the Europa League. If I'm not mistaken, he got a goal and then got a red card. Sounds about right. Excited to see him develop. I think he has all the makings of being a real top talent. Of course, the toppest of top talents, and that is Mikey Moore, has gone out on loan to Rangers for the season in Scotland. This is our biggest loan of the season, and especially to a big club like this taking on one of our youth. The Scottish season has started 2 weeks ago. He has not played yet. It has believed to be age reasons. His 18th birthday, I believe, is either today or tomorrow, which should open him up to become a player fully for Rangers this season. And Rangers most likely in the Champions League, I believe. So he may even be getting Europe playing time for them, which would obviously be absolutely huge for Tottenham. And the final one is Alfie Dorrington. He goes out on loan again to Aberdeen in Scotland. This is another move where you're just going to say, let's run it back. You did really well there last year. Let's do it again. Last year, I believe he played in 16 games for them, was pretty good. I believe he picked up a goal. I don't remember if he had an assist. He may have not. But that is a massive, massive loan for Tottenham, as he's another player that could turn out to be, just a very, very exciting player. Let's our farewell for good. There's only one player on this list. We'll get to that point in a second. Son Heung-min has left for LAFC after 10 years of service to this club, and what a 10 years it was. He joins LAFC on a £20 million deal that breaks the MLS transfer record, but at what cost? At what cost for our hearts? We knew it was coming, and that was a big thing. I'm kind of glad we knew it was coming, but I'm also not, because this was just it's an absolutely devastating loss. It is so bad. You could tell just the vibes he brought into the club, like, were just different than anybody else. He always was just this, happy guy, always trying to bring positivity even when we were just at our lowest, and I think the fan base really returned that. When he was at his lowest, we, just kept going. And like I said, it's a tough loss. Nobody we cannot replace him. In the words of Pep Guardiola, we cannot replace him. He cannot be replaced. Yeah. With the way Thomas Frank was talking in the preseason, I know the captaincy question was asked, and he said he wasn't going to commit. I think that, of course, that was before his son said that he was going to leave the club. I think the plans were already in place for him to leave. I think he knew his time was done. I think lifting the Europa League trophy left everybody on a happy note. It's like, hey, there's no higher high that you can leave on than with that. I am forever grateful for Son's contributions to this club. It is Thursday was the first match where Sonny wasn't a part of it. And it was like, well, maybe he's just injured, but it really hasn't set in. It's going to feel really weird on Wednesday when he's not there in Udine, Italy, for the Super Cup final. It's going to take some getting used to. It's such a tough loss. Even though we saw the regression these past 2 years, he is not the player he used to be. But even then, it is so tough to lose a player like that. And then on the other hand, I mentioned, he's the only player on this list. There's a lot of deadwood floating on this team right now, and just nobody seems to be biting. Lang's business this summer is absolutely disastrous. At some point, it's not even the transfers in that's his problem. It's the transfers out too. The fact nobody's even kind of come close. I barely heard rumors about players leaving this summer. Every once in a while, you get a Yves Bissouma rumor. maybe a Richarlison one every once in a great while. But there are no other rumors out there about us selling anybody. And that's a big problem when you're a club like Tottenham is, where you basically, the way the club's set up, you got to sell to buy. And when nobody's buying your stuff, you can't buy for new stuff. It's a disaster. I figured we were going to do a lot of business selling wise in the early parts of the summer with a new manager coming in. That means new ideas. Players aren't going to fit into the system. Let's get rid of them now. Let's make some money. Let's bring in some new players. That has not happened. I really don't know if I should even expect a lot of sellings this summer. I mean, I feel like we really should, because if you really think about it, we're coming up very quickly to the Champions League draw. That's going to be at the end of the month, which means Champions League fixtures start mid-September. That Champions League roster only allows 23 players. Or I think it's 22 for us, because obviously you got Brandon Austin as homegrown. It's all a mess there. It is really a mess on that side of things, having homegrown players, club-grown talent, all of that. Just, it's a disaster for Tottenham for that. But you got to cut that down a lot. There's a lot of dead wood on this team. And you got to find people to cut. That's truly all it is. You got to find people to cut, and you got to find people to buy these cuts. Where are these people coming from? I have no idea. It seems like every other club gets blessed by some Saudi lord funding their club in Saudi Arabia and saying, I'm going to buy your terrible player for £100 million or whatever it is. I mean, we saw Darwin Nunez get just an absolutely insane amount of money to go to Saudi. Nobody's interested in Tottenham's deadwood, because they're not great. They're not great players. Let's be honest here. They're just not that great. It would be good to see some more faces leave. I just don't know if that's going to happen. Let's take a look at the preseason fixtures so far this season. 6 games, just like last year. Everything feels a little bit more condensed, though, this year. Tottenham opened up the preseason back in, I want to say it was mid-July. They traveled up to Reading. They pulled off a 2-0 victory. They went into the half level at 0-0. And then second half, I believe it was Will Lancashire opened the scoring for Tottenham. And then that kind of opened the floodgates as he scored in the 49th minute. Luka Vucevic scored in the 54th. He had an absolutely insane game. And that's what propelled Tottenham to a 2-0 victory in that one. Just a week later, Tottenham had 2 matches on the same day. First one was at Hotspur Way as Tottenham faced off against Wycombe Wanderers. It was a 2-2 draw. Pop Sarr gets the 2 goals for Tottenham. One in the 14th minute to open the scoring on the game in an absolutely insane goal. And then the leveler in the 66th minute to make it 2-2. Junior Quintara for Wycombe scores 2 goals. He was probably the player of the match. Later on that day for Tottenham, it wasn't obviously the same team. It was a split squad scrimmage, basically. If anybody knows spring training in baseball, there is multiple times clubs will split their squads and play 2 games in the same day. This one took place at Luton Town. That kind of featured more of your first team players. That ended in a 0-0 draw. Not the greatest. And then we head out to, I believe, Hong Kong. And this was right at the beginning of August, end of July. This one took place on July 31st. Tottenham walked away with a 1-0 victory in a North London derby that was almost as far away from North London as you could get, as I said, in Hong Kong. Popstar with a goal in the 45th minute from right around the midfield mark. That would be the only goal of the game as Tottenham Hotspur walked away with a 1-0 victory. And as they always say, I believe it is the Hong Kong Football Festival champions. You will never sing that. And then we get to Friday, or it was Saturday of that week between Arsenal and Newcastle was when Son announced he was leaving the club. And then Sunday was the final game. Ends in a 1-1 draw. Brennan Johnson scores in the 4th minute. Absolutely insane goal assisted by Kevin Donzo, who has had a pretty good summer so far. I think he's going to be a really good depth piece for Tottenham. Harvey Barnes scores for Newcastle in the 38th minute. Neither side can find a winner past that. Heung-min's son gets subbed off in the 65th minute. What an emotional moment that was. He gets subbed off for the final time, and then you get the James Maddison. Oh my gosh. Just off the ball in like the 83rd minute, and you knew immediately that it was his ACL. He goes down, and he wasn't getting back up. Oh, and so starts the injury problems that were already plaguing this club this summer. Destiny Udogie already injured. Dominic Solanke already injured. Dejan Kulusevski, I mean, he's going to be out until like November. And that's dating back to last season. And then you get James Maddison out probably all season with an ACL tear. That is, oh my, that's an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. And then come this past Thursday, the Bayern Munich game. This is still technically part of the Harry Kane deal, somehow, some way. Bayern Munich win 4-0. My God. Tottenham never looked in this game at all. Harry Kane scores, of course he does in the 12th minute. He misses a penalty in the 15th. And then the second half, Kingsley Coman scores in the 61st. Carl scores in the 75th. That's a big future player for Bayern Munich. And then Kusai Asare scores in the 80th. And that makes it 4-0. Tottenham really didn't look into this game until the 85th when they were basically playing against academy players. That's a massive problem. I hope that opens some eyes at the club that we are not ready for the Champions League this year. We are just not ready because we haven't brought in anybody. Absolute disaster. So, given that we are 6 matches technically into the Thomas Frank era, just wanted to do kind of a quick look at what we could potentially see this season. Formation-wise, he plays a 4-2-3-1, and this is somewhat what we've been lining up with this summer. Some of these players really haven't seen the field much, but obviously Vicario is going to start in net. Your back four, I believe, will stay the same from what we saw last season. Obviously, we haven't really seen Udogie this summer so far. He'll be on the left, Van de Ven left center, Romero right center, and then Pedro Porro on the right. In the defensive midfield, I don't think you bring in Paulinho just to sit him on the bench. I think he is mostly always starting. I think Bentancur has made a really big impression on Thomas Frank this summer with the way Frank has talked about him. I expect him to get a lot of starts. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bentancur place kind of is a little bit of a rotation, but that's kind of what I'm expecting. The 3 up is, you don't bring in Kudus if he isn't going to start. I think he plays there. The lack of a 10 right now is a big problem. That's kind of why I have Sar there. It kind of feels like he can basically fit anywhere for now. I guess we'll see. where that goes. And then Brennan Johnson, I'm not so convinced right now that he is going to be starting, especially with the Savinho rumors from last night. If that is true, I don't know what happens with Brennan Johnson. I mean, it's good we have him, depth, all that fun stuff. And then Dominic Solanke, I expect to start up top. You look at some of the players that didn't feature here, but obviously could play a major, major factor. Lucas Bergvall, of course, had an amazing season last season for Tottenham when he did get the opportunities. I will not be surprised to see him get a little bit more playing time this summer, especially this season. As we know, Thomas Frank is great with youth talent. Wilson Odobert, he's another one. Another youth talent that I think has really made a big impression on Thomas Frank this summer. I'm excited to see him develop. One of those also is Matthijs Tel. I'm interested to see what Frank does with him because I think he is a top young talent. He just hasn't come to his full potential yet. Will be interesting to see how Frank likes to see him play. Richarlison getting a little bit more play time right now with Solanke injured, but he's the only other striker, and as we know, Richarlison is injury prone. Yves Bissouma, one of the players I'm kind of still surprised is at the club. I don't know if he's still going to be at the club come September, but we'll see. Jed Spence, he's going to be a major factor this year. He's going to be in the rotation, whether it be on the left for Udogie, as he has been playing a lot this summer, or on the right for Poirot if he needs rest or heaven forbid he's injured. Archie Gray, another young player. That's another one that, feels like it's going to be big for Thomas Frank. He loves young players like that. Look what he did at Brentford with a lot of great talent. And I believe Gray was linked to Brentford at one point, so that should be very, very interesting to watch. And then, of course, you have Kevin Donzo. We don't win the Europa League if it wasn't for his substitution on. He really cleared out that game, made sure that it ended the way it did. Ben Davies, servant to this club. Another one I'm not 100% sure will be here. I mean, we signed him to extension, so I have to believe he's staying. But with Son leaving, I'm not so sure that's a guarantee at this point. But we'll see. I think it's more of a guarantee than not. So we'll just go with that. And then Radu Dragusin. We don't know the player he's going to be after that injury. It's going to be very interesting to see how he plays out because obviously we have Brendan Koto, Takai, and Luka Vucevic. You never know. Your spot could be lost very quickly here. So that's kind of what I'm expecting from this 4-2-3-1. We'll obviously see how that plays out, especially come Wednesday. First major game of the Thomas Frank era. So let's take a look at the schedule. You start off August. Of course, you have the Super Cup on Wednesday against PSG. A team that has looked unbeatable, except, of course, in the Club World Cup final. I'm terrified of this game, but if we know Tottenham Hotspur, they will win this game 1-0 and then lose to Burnley on Saturday 1-0 or 2-0 or 3-0. They'll find a way to lose it if they win on Wednesday. But yeah, I'm terrified. I think we're going to get shellacked by PSG. They are just such the better team. And we've done nothing this summer to even get close to them. Hopefully it's another wake-up call for the club that we need to bring in players. And then we close out before the September international window with City away, Bournemouth at home. And then you get into September, you come back from the international break, it's West Ham away. And then you get into Champions League play, and as I said, basically from here on out, unless it's an international break, you're basically playing 2 matches a week until February probably. You got Champions League match days 1 and 2 in September. In between those, you have a Brighton away. You got the Carabao Cup third round. You got a Wolverhampton away. And then after that second match day in the Champions League, you go to Leeds away before the October international break. You come back from that. You play Aston Villa on the weekend, coming back. Then you got Champions League. Then you travel to the Bramley Moordock Stadium against Everton. And then you're in the EFL Cup in the midweek. And then it's Chelsea coming out of that. And then it's match day 4 in the Champions League. And then to close it out before the November international window, it's Manchester United at home. And guess what you get coming out of that is the North London Derby at the Emirates against Woolwich Arsenal. And then guess what? After that, it's Champions League again. And you can see the pattern that exists here. Oh my, oh my, oh my. This team does not have the depth for all these games, just like they didn't last year. And yet here we are with basically the same players. We may have even gotten worse from last year. And yet here we are. We're going to be playing 2 matches a week for, I would say, a majority of the season. And it may be an absolute disaster class. It may be an absolute disaster. We're going to see some scary games. Scary bad. I'm terrified. I'm terrified of this schedule. It is going to be so jam-packed. You are throwing in a brand new manager who has never coached in a European competition, let alone has had to deal with, multiple games in a week. Brentford really didn't have that problem because they always seem to go out in the cups in the early round too, and that is scary. That is absolutely terrifying. So things officially get underway this Wednesday in the Super Cup. And like I said, I'm terrified for it. This may be the most terribly watched game of all time for myself. But we'll be there. We'll be there when Tottenham wins 1-0. Even though they won't. They're going to lose 5-0. So, yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this Tottenham season preview of Top the Perch. We'll do the recap on Wednesday, of course, for the Super Cup. And then probably Thursday we'll do Premier League preview. And then Friday it starts for the league. And then Saturday it starts for Tottenham Hotspur. So it's going to be a busy week here. We're straight into the Nick Burt Sports Network for year 3 of Top the Perch. So thank you so much for watching. If you just stumble across this video, click like, click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. Like I said, we'll be back Wednesday, win or lose. We may be European champions again. Who knows? We may be the ultimate European champions if you really think about it. So, even though we won't. So, thank you so much for watching. We will see you again on Wednesday evening for another episode of Top of the Perch.